Howdy, come on in. Tonight I'd like to talk about one of my favorite places in the world, which was my grandmother and grandfather Eldridge's farm before they moved to town. It's one of those places that kind of, I would describe as an idyllic place for a 6 to 10-year-old kid to be in the 40s and 50s. It was a place without electricity, without running water, without gas to cook with. So Grandma cooked on a wooden stove. Water was brought up from a well next to the house. The kitchen was like a added-on lean-to on the, as you face the house, the left side. As I recall, the well was on the right side of the house, and then further to the left was a chicken coop, and where the chickens ran, and then farther away from that there was a smokehouse where they made ham. And my grandmother Eldridge was a really wonderful and kind person. She was also a great cook, very she did a lot. She made almost everything. I remember wearing shirts that she had sewn out of, well, back then when you bought a 25-pound bag of flour, it was kept in a piece of cotton fabric that had a print on it, and Grandma made shirts out of that for us kids, and little dresses for the little girls. So she was pretty handy at just about anything, but mostly for me, she was known as just a great cook and one of the people who loved me unconditionally, and it was just such a warm, welcoming, nice, safe place to be growing up. I loved the farm. Grandpa was one of those guys. He was like, I don't know, maybe 6'2", big, tall guy. And most of my life he was pretty heavy, probably 225 to 265, somewhere in that range. One of the things that he did when us kids were around is he had little, he wore bib overalls, and he called them overhauls. I don't know where that came from, but he wore these Oshkosh Bagosh bib overalls, and had little pockets up here, and one of those pockets he kept mint candies that he'd give us kids. And just, you always knew Grandpa loved you and cared about you, and there was just never any question about that. So Grandma and Grandpa lived on this little farm. I don't know how many acres, not a lot, and there was the house as I described, and then down the hill a little ways, as you face the house to the right, was the barn, and where the pigs were and the cows were, and there was a little pond back behind that, and there was I can't remember how many cows. He milked cows twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. probably, I don't know, for years. And one of the ways that they made extra money was egg and butter money, they called it. Grandma would sell eggs, and they would milk the cows and churn separate the milk from the cream, and then they'd make butter out of that cream. And that was a daily chore. And then they kept it in, I don't know if you ever saw those milk buckets. Erin has a couple of them in her backyard, those 5-gallon milk buckets. They'd fill one of those up, and somebody'd come and pick that up and pay for it and leave another one. And Grandma'd sell eggs and butter, and she'd churn butter out of that stuff. And anyway, that's one of the ways they made back then what they call pin money, just, a few cents here and there. Their main crop was pecans. And I don't know how many acres of pecans, but it wasn't a lot, I don't think. And one of the favorite times of years to go down to Grandma and Grandpa's was harvest time for the pecans. And what would usually happen is Grandma and Grandpa I think there were 5 kids. There was my mom, Eva, her sister, Velma, her other sister, Alma, Uncle Lawrence, and Uncle James. And there had been another uncle. The eldest was Uncle Thurman, and he was killed in an accident, I think in his early 20s. I don't think I ever met him. I may have, but if I did, I was too little to know about it. But it was a tragic accident, and Grandpa found him moments after he was fatally injured by a piece of machinery. So anyway, that farm, they had 3 or 4 cows, I don't remember how many, and a bull. And they were all named. I don't remember all of the names of the cows. I think one of them was Bessie, and I do remember the name of the bull. His name was Ed. And Ed was a big old, slow, lumbering, gentle giant of a bull. And Ed would lower his head down, big old horns and everything. He'd lower his head down, and us kids could throw a leg over his neck, and he'd raise his head back up, and you could sit back on his back, and he'd just wander around wherever he wanted and eat a little grass and do whatever he wanted to do. And if you got up on his neck and started going toward it, sliding toward his head, he'd lower his head and you could climb off. And it was pretty fun. Old Ed was kind of cool. And Grandpa milked the cows, like I say, every day, twice a day. Cows have to be milked morning and evening, and usually 12 hours apart. And so that's milking by hand. I think 3 or 4 cows, I'm not sure exactly, but they'd come into the barn and he'd put some hay or grain or something down there for them to eat, and they'd put their heads through this big old wide lumber things that was a trough where they put the food, and then this big lumber stuff would close over their neck, and they'd put a little tie around the top so the cow couldn't pull out. And each cow had some kind of a different personality. Some of them were gentle, some of them were pain in the neck. And they're always switching their tails. And us kids, if we gotten away, we'd get a switch of tail right across the face, and it hurt. That tail was coarse, and that hair on the tail was real coarse and hard and stiff. Anyway, and then Grandpa had milked those cows and taught me how to milk. And I've never got any good at it, but I'd try it, And he'd take that teat, I think they called them on a cow. Anyway, he'd squirt some over to a cat, and the cat would lick his chops, and Grandpa would milk some more and give another cat a squirt of that milk. And it was just, I don't know, there was an odor about that barn that was comforting. The cattle were gentle enough that they didn't try to hurt you. Although I remember this one cow always tried to kick Grandpa, but he put a stop to that pretty quick. But anyway, that place, that little farm, was just such a comfortable, joyous place to be. most of the time we'd go down there, there would be all the aunts and uncles and most of the kids down there, and we'd go wandering around the farm and find, we called them horny toads. I don't know what they actually are, but anyway, they were a horned lizard, and if you'd roll them on their back and rub their belly, they'd just go to sleep, just like, I don't know if it hypnotized them or what, but anyway, then they just lay there like they were dead. And not far from Grandpa's place was and I don't know what river that was that ran through there. I think it was a river, a small river. Anyway, Grandpa would take me down there fishing every now and then. And that was just wonderful. We'd go catch a catfish or something, and Grandma'd cook it for supper. It was just, I don't know, it's just, I don't know how to describe that place any more than just such a loving, comfortable, nice place to be when I was a little kid. Just enjoyed that so much. I've got about 1 million stories to tell you about the farm and about Grandma and Grandpa. I don't know if I'll get them all told, but I'm going to stop tonight. I've already run this video a little longer than I should, but just know that Grandma and Grandpa loved the heck out of us grandkids, and we all loved them back. They were just the kindest people you ever want to meet. Anyway, love you guys. Hope you enjoyed the story. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.